Hello friends and family of YouTube. I know a couple of days ago I told you that I would show you my trick to keeping rabbits out of my garden. Now before I do it, I want to show you a little something. See the house behind me back there? That's where my brother lives. He's had a rabbit problem. Rotate a little bit. This house behind me, that's my mom's house. She's had a rabbit problem. And the house back here is another neighbor's house. They've had a rabbit problem. And here's my home. I've had no rabbit problem. So I'm gonna show you the difference between my garden area and these other three houses. All I can do is assume that that is why I don't have a rabbit problem, because I want to show you one more thing. Okay, so now we're in my backyard. If you look right there, back behind there, you'll see some sawhorses. That's where rabbits go to feed on my grass. I see rabbits out there almost daily. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how close that is to my garden. Here's my garden. So I've got rabbits that feed daily on grass, but never even come to my garden. So now I'm going to show you what the difference is between my garden and everybody else's. Okay, now the first one may be a joke. It may or may not have some impact. I don't know. But I'm certain that the third one I'm going to tell you does have an impact. But anyway, up under this tent, this is where I build porch swings. I cut up cedar sawdust and cedar boards to make porch swings. I have a radio up under there, and I leave it playing country music all night long, all during the day. May or may not have an impact, but I do want to mention anything that might be causing me to not have a problem. Again, I think my number 3 answer is the true one, but anyway, I want to tell you everything. So here's a big pile of cedar. You can smell this cedar from a decent distance away. I feel like this may also have some impact. Plus, let me take you back here. There's my brother's dog showed up over here. This thing's a pest. That would keep any rabbit away, I can assure you that. I give away a lot of cedar sawdust to my friends and family, but you can see right there's a real big pile of it. That cedar sawdust has a very strong smell. Rabbits have a very strong smell, and that's where I'm going, where this third thing I feel may play a part. Okay, so what I do is I have some commercial property, and I let the grass grow a little bit taller in a field that I have. Also, my neighbor does not cut his grass, so I do the kind act of cutting his grass because he's too lazy. But what I also do is I take the grass clippings and I put them in a plastic tote like this, and I let them sit in there for about a day, sometimes 2 days, and you can smell that that grass will start to ferment. It will start to get a mold on it, and when it does, of course, it has a odor to it. I lay that grass all around my garden. I even put it down through the rows of the garden. And I'll tell you what else it does. It prevents grass and weeds from growing. It will smother out grass and weeds, but it has a pungent smell. If you've ever seen a rabbit, you can see that their nose is constantly moving. That's because their nose is constantly looking for a scent of something tasty to go eat. So even though I may have some things that would smell real good and tasty to a rabbit or even a deer, with this pungent smell of this grass clipping down here, it's not very pungent to me after I've laid it down after a few days, but I would imagine that it's still pungent to an animal that has a much stronger sense of smell. So these are the only 3 differences that I have going in my garden versus my brother, my mom, and my neighbor, is I have this grass clippings all throughout my garden. I have country music playing on the radio, and I have cedar sawdust out here. So all these are pretty simple. If you're wondering where can you get some cedar sawdust or cedar shavings, you can get it at Walmart in a bag for about $6-8, something like that. And it's a real big size bag. Now I do want to tell you a couple of things about cedar. Cedar is acidic. You do not want to put cedar into your soil of your garden because some fruits and vegetables do not like acidic soil. The other thing about cedar is it does not want to break down and turn into soil, so that cedar would be there for years to come. So you really don't want to put cedar into your garden, but you may want to put it on the outside of your garden to keep certain bugs and rodents away. Well, for those of you joining for the first time, hey, I appreciate y'all coming to join me. This is not a gardening channel. This is a channel that I show a little bit of everything, just my lifestyle and whatever I happen to be into for the day. So what I want to show you now is me and a buddy of mine went to a graveyard, and this particular graveyard has some Civil War soldiers buried there. It also has an American Revolutionary War soldier buried there. And this particular graveyard is more or less kind of an area where the paupers would have been buried. A lot of the people that were very low income, it may have even been a situation where being buried was free. I don't know, but it is definitely not a prominent area to be buried at. But before anyone takes and twists and turns as to why I'm showing you some of this Confederate stuff, has nothing to do with whether I support slavery or support the Civil War or anything to do with that. Don't want anybody to twist and turn it. I would be glad to show you some Union soldier graves, but we don't have any here in Alabama, at least at this graveyard that I'm taking you to. So I do want to show you some local history, so here it is. Well, me and my buddy D-wight come out here to a very old cemetery. This is in North Alabama. Matter of fact, we are close to the Tennessee state line, and there are some Civil War soldiers buried in here. There's also American Revolutionary War soldiers buried in here, and there is a lot of unmarked graves in here as well. And man, I tell you what, you can see right there how the ground is sunken in. So you know that was a grave, but there was no marker. And we see those all over up on top of this mountain. Last time I was here, you couldn't even hardly get around. So somebody has really done a great job of clearing this place up. But I'll show you some of these headstones as we're going through here today, and try to get you some of the stories behind them if they tell them. There's a couple of these that do have little headstone stories and even footstone stories with them as well. And here's a good example on this headstone. It's got so much moss you can't read it, so when I was talking about the headstone having a little bit of a story, and sometimes there's a footstone, and here's the footstone that goes with this particular one, so you can read the dates there. So there's quite a bit of the Confederate soldiers up here on this hill. And I want to show you this ironwork that's done here. With these graves being right at the turn of 1900, you know some of this ironwork is probably dated around that time period. And really, really neat stuff. I have never been good with working with metal. Now, I tell you what I'd really like to know is I'd like to know what is on that little placard right there. Next time I come up here, if I remember, I will bring a toothbrush and see if I can't clean that up and see what that says. Now we've kind of reached the edge of the place here, but these folks here died right in the late 1800s, and something you always hate to see, of course, is a baby's grave, and this one was born and died born in September of 1878, died in October of 1878. But the good thing is nobody's got up here vandalizing this place. I mean, it's such easy target, but this is an area where a lot of good old country folks live, people that don't cause any trouble, best people you could ever meet. That's why I do hate to, sometimes you'll hear people give me a hard time about my accent and all that, but I'm telling you, you will never meet better people than you meet when you get up into these small communities of good old country folks, good people. They raise their kids right. If their kids got up here and tore up these graves, I guarantee you the kids would be afraid of the wrath of mom and daddy before they would the wrath of the law, because the law probably wouldn't do anything to them anyway. But anyway, I love this old, love these old cemeteries and these old headstones and stuff. And me and D-wight been buddies about 20 years, and he told me the other day, he said, "Man, I love these old cemeteries." I was like, "Well, man, I got a treat for you." I want to show y'all something that surprised me. This guy was buried here in 1980, and this is a temporary marker that is put here by the company when they bury you, and you can change out all these letters as needed to fill out the plate, so that while they're making the headstone, this placard here will stay. But I cannot believe nobody has stolen that over all these years. That has been there 40 years without anybody coming up here and destroying anything, stealing something as easy to steal as that is. Like I say, there's some great things about being in the South. There's some bad things too, but we got people around here that usually like to show respect. I thought this was pretty neat too. They've got his birth and death dates, but they didn't have hers because more than likely they probably didn't know when she was born. Probably no direct records of it. We have seen that a couple of times since we've been up here as well, that somebody would not have their birth date on there. Here's something I thought was pretty fascinating. Not only do you have a baby that had passed away in 1939, but that somebody has still brought some artificial flowers and put up here for this baby's grave. It's the only grave up here that we've seen any flowers on. Now, what I'm about to show you, I think is really hard to believe. This Confederate soldier here, you see this metal placard that is here, and it's showing the dates that he served in the Civil War. 1861 to 1865, and this right here is exactly why I will not show on this video of where this graveyard is at, because I don't want anybody to come here and steal this. Because those of you that know that I sell at flea markets, I see these things show up every now and then, and I never buy one because I know it has to be stolen. You see the rebel flag here on the front, Confederate States of America, and got the flag on it. A lot of folks don't know this, but there's 13 stars on the flag, and those 13 stars represent the colonies of America. One thing I want to point out too is this guy lived 65 years. That does not say store owner, family, father. It doesn't say he had 5 kids. Doesn't talk about what a great Christian he was. It only talks about the fact of 65 years of his life that he served in the Confederate Army. It's just one of those things that here in the South, for whatever reason, people did, they took pride in the fact that they had fought in the Civil War. And it's not that people would have fought in the Civil War necessarily because they would have owned slaves. There was not a lot of slave owners, especially in our area, but they did not like to be told from the federal government what they could or could not do. at least that's kind of what we hear, and kind of the stories that have been passed down through families here in our area. But history books always tell a different story, so you never know what to believe. But I just wanted to kind of tell what I've heard throughout the years being in this area. And here's another infant grave. And I don't believe we'll ever make sense of the Civil War, but making sense of the Revolutionary War is not any easier to do. We moved from England, come over here. England comes over and has a war with us, and we're shooting against our own family and friends that we used to be neighbors with back when we were in England, or wherever we moved here from. So wars never do make sense. So trying to make sense of a war 100, 200 years ago is a hard thing to do. But glad to see that these guys have been respected out here, and that they've got some kind of recognition going on. I'll show you something. This fella here is John Davis. He died in 1829. Somebody's replaced his headstone, but I want to point this one out to you. This is when you know you are broke and poor. Right here is when you couldn't afford nothing but a rock with ED scratched in it. That was all your family could afford. And you know, this could have happened during the Great Depression, could have been any time for that matter. Most of these right here is 1860s, so you know, it could have even happened during the Civil War. May not have been the guy who made headstones might have been too busy, or he might have got killed himself in the war, who knows. All right, now this one kind of tells a story of its own, and your imagination can pick up the rest. This is one of the nicest headstones that we found out here. Now, you read this and you can see that it was erected in memory of their faithful servant by the family, J.M. Payne. So evidently Martha Jane Kreiner was the servant, and they didn't even know her birth date, because if you notice it says died 1957. But I thought it was very respectful that this woman was their servant on whatever level it was. Maybe she was a caretaker for the children, maybe she fixed their food, who knows what kind of servant she actually was for the family. But I thought it was very respectful that they did give her a headstone, because I'm going to tell you, there is a lot of paupers that are buried in this place, and you know there is no headstones. Some of them couldn't even afford a rock. So, well, you're really poor when you can't afford a rock. But yeah, you can tell out through there, there's a lot of dips and valleys, and it's from where graves have just sunken in, but there's no headstone to let you know who was there. Not too long ago on a video, I said, hey, I know it's been a while since I told a story, and I apologize, so I promised to give one soon. Well, today's that day. So when I was about somewhere around 4.5, 5 years old, something like that, I was in a preschool program at a church, and we would do art projects and all this kind of stuff to keep us entertained and keep us all doing something. So anyway, the teacher had out all this paint and had everything set up, and we were finger painting or whatever we were doing. And the teacher told us, she said, do not spill the paint. Otherwise, she just left it at that. I was like, otherwise, what does that mean? I raised my hand, and I said, whatever her name was, I said, what is the word otherwise? What does that mean? And she said, don't spill the paint. I said, oh, okay. So I got home that night to my parents, you know, and I said, I learned a new word today at preschool. And it's like, well, what'd you learn? I said, otherwise. And they said, what does the word otherwise mean? And I said, don't spill the paint. I truly thought that's what it meant. Folks, I appreciate y'all spending some time with me today. Love to read your comments down below. Hope y'all have a good one. Hope to see y'all again real soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.